Hey. Sick Nick here. After a brief hiatus, I am so pleased to be back making videos again. So today we're going to be talking about a few things. I'll give you a quick update on what's been going on with me, and then we'll get into what is Ehlers-Danlos syndrome.
What is it?
I'll give you a little bit of history on the classification of EDS, and a little health fact and a fun fact as well. So let's get started.
Well,
what have I been up to? My health seems to be progressing, even though I often feel like I am standing still and not moving forward. There are objective signs that I am moving forward, like being able to do more on vacation one year than last year, for instance. These are ways that I can tell that I actually am moving forward, even if it's like seems to be the same thing day in and day out.
Physio, exercise, yoga, more physiotherapy.
One thing I've been up to.
Bam, 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 bam. Bam, 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 bam.
Getting that buzzed. Actually, I did it myself, actually with the help of my mother, I will admit. And then, bam, yeah. So I'm pumped about this because now I have a lot less hair to deal with. I sweat like crazy because of my autonomic issues. So all of a sudden I get hot flashes even if I'm cold. Actually, it happens a lot when I'm cold, and then I just start pouring sweat even if I'm just sitting there. I think personally it has to do with the orthostatic intolerance issues that I have, but that's a subject for another day. Anyway, let's bring it back to the point. The past 5-6 years, if not my experience before that as well, have taught me a lot about what I need to do in order for me to feel good in my body. And the purpose of these videos is really to just impart what I've learned over the past few years. And if any of it helps, this will all be worth it. So, what is Ehlers-Danlos syndrome?
What is it? What is it?
The Ehlers-Danlos syndromes, or EDS, are a clinically and genetically heterogeneous group of heritable connective tissue disorders, or HCTDs, characterized by joint hypermobility, skin hyperextensibility, and tissue fragility. They have sort of reclassified what we know as Ehlers-Danlos syndrome and the subtypes. Ehlers in 1901 and Danlos in 1970 first described a clinical syndrome that was most characterized by skin laxicity and joint hypermobility. Okay. In 1988, the Berlin nosology delineated 11 subtypes, and then that was used until 1998 when the Villefranche nosology recategorized everything into 6 subtypes. So then we come upon 2017. So the Villefranche nosology has been used for quite a while now. But in 2017, the International Consortium on Ehlers-Danlos syndrome reclassified the syndromes into 13 subtypes.
Health fact?
Experts estimate that up to 10% of the general population may have some degree of joint hypermobility, with women affected 3 times more than men. So we're talking about generalized joint hypermobility, so that does not include the widespread pain and tissue fragility that we're talking about in Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. This is simply joint, the ability for a joint to go past a normal range of motion. So it might look like it's inverted as opposed to, say, this is the knee. So instead of maybe to there, you might sway forward like this if this is the knee, if that's the knee. But I think that's kind of an interesting fact, and that's from Alan Posinki, something like that, from 2010, and he studies this kind of stuff. So now you've sat through all of this, so I think you deserve a crazy fact. We all know about how in the States, people who are uninsured often get a lower level of treatment than people who are insured when they wind up in the hospital. And this is just because the hospital gets reimbursed. They get paid for the treatment they give to people with insurance, and when they treat people without insurance, they don't always get paid for that. So this is quite an interesting fact, if I do say so myself. And this is from Uncle John's Old Faithful Bathroom Reader. So there was a study called Factors Associated with the Disposition of Several Severely Injured Patients Initially Seen at Non-Trauma Center Emergency Departments, Disparities by Insurance Status. And this was in the Journal of the American Medical Association, Surgery, in May 2014. The purpose: to see if a critically injured patient's insurance status, whether they have medical insurance or not, influences whether they are transferred from an ordinary emergency room to a hospital equipped with trauma center where they are less likely to die. Hospitals are much more likely to be paid when they treat an insured patient than when they treat an uninsured patient, which I just told you, because I read it here, but I also knew it, I swear. The methodology of it: Stanford University School of Medicine researchers studied 4,513 cases from 2009, in which patients suffering from major trauma were admitted to 336 non-trauma centers, or ordinary emergency rooms, around the country. They looked at which of these patients were kept at a non-trauma center and which ones were transferred to hospitals that had trauma centers, where they would receive better care. A critically injured patient is 25% less likely to die if they are treated at a trauma center. The findings are what are really cool. So it says, we found that insured critically injured trauma patients are much less likely to be transferred out of non-trauma center emergency departments than uninsured trauma patients after adjusting for patient injury and hospital characteristics. The study's authors note, given that transfer to a trauma center has been shown to reduce mortality, these insured patients may be receiving suboptimal care. It's the opposite of the overly aggressive transfer of a poor patient. Dr. Arthur Kellerman, Dean of U.S. Military Medical School, told PBS NewsHour in 2014. This is actually suggesting that patients who have coverage may not be getting transferred as quickly as they should be. I thought that was really interesting because it actually goes against, the our natural intuition that insurance means you're going to get a better standard of care, at least in places like the United States. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope to see you again soon. Thanks for watching.